streaming? Okay. Good morning, y'all. All 5 of you, 6, 7 of you. Okay. I don't think you got into this one last week. Okay. So there were some emissaries that came down from Babylon. That ought to ring a bell that's familiar. So he's entertaining these emissaries that came from Babylon. First part of it, it's in chapter 39. We're more than half done. We're almost 2/3 done. At that time, Merodach Baladan, son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that he had been sick and he had recovered. Hezekiah was pleased and showed them all his treasure house, the silver and the gold and the spices and the precious oil and his whole armory and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house nor his dominion that Hezekiah does not show them. So, when do you think these letters were sent from a time standpoint? Early in Hezekiah's reign? It was in Hezekiah's reign. May not know when Merodach's reign was, but early or late? About halfway through. It would have been post 15 years to the end, wouldn't it? This is when the two of those were co-regents, okay? One was regent in Babylon, one was regent in Jerusalem. It wasn't Judah, it was just Jerusalem. Hezekiah goes from about 714 to about 686. And Merodach is kind of spotty the way it is. He's got a long term at the beginning, and then he's got a little spot there right in front of his name, right there. It was about 9 months. At least history says it was about 9 months. I think it's in that spot that's in the red box. The reason is because that's far enough, because you remember for the last chapter that you went through with Hezekiah, he was sick to the point of death, and Isaiah says, you're going to die. And Hezekiah prayed to God, and prayed to God, and prayed to God, and says, I'll give you 15 more years. That's about 15 years from the end. Now, whether history has it right of when Merodach was back in power, because he came out of power, why do you think he came out of power? The Assyrians. About 700, the Assyrians sacked Babylon. They were the big guys on the block. They continue to be the big guys on the block, but they weren't going to stay the big guys on the block. But in that particular time, that puts it in this particular time frame. So you kind of got where it is. It's about a little bit more than midway, I think, than where I've got it right now, because I lined it up with the Merodach was. But it's late in Hezekiah's. Hezekiah's already gone through and got another 15 years. It's kind of interesting. What did he do in response to the query? In other words, when they came, and was that a good idea? No, it wasn't a good idea. Let me go show some foreign entity all my good stuff. All the stuff that's worth stealing or taking. And you know these guys made notes. Everything that was there down there that Hezekiah showed them, they made notes. Now, I don't know whether it was normal for them to do that, but it was certainly normal for the worldly people to do that. But Hezekiah just made kind of a blunder, in my mind. And I think that's shared. Because then Isaiah the prophet came to King Hezekiah and said, what did these men say, and from where have they come to you? And Hezekiah said, they have come to me from a far country, from Babylon. He said, this would be Isaiah, what have they seen in your house? So Hezekiah answered, they have seen all that is in my house. There is nothing among my treasuries that I have not shown them. The first part of that, what part of Isaiah's questioning did Hezekiah not answer? He asked him two things. What did they say? What do they come? Where have they come to you from? Or where do they come from? Which one didn't he answer? He said, they came from a far country. He said, what did they say? He didn't answer that question. Then he asked, what have they seen? Why do you think he asked, what have they seen?
Part of that question of what they say probably leads to hey,
What did they see?
we get payment.
Yep.
Now it's what did you show them they can have payment.
If we have to offer tribute, they know you can offer tribute. Okay, so you can, I think from that particular point, how do you think Isaiah reacted when he said, I showed him everything? If there ever was somebody who was going to roll their eyes, Isaiah probably rolled his eyes like, oh, good grief. You shouldn't have done that.
Make your cards face up on the table.
Well, yeah. Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days are coming when all that is in your house and all that your fathers have laid up to store to this day will be carried to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord. And some of your sons who will issue from you, whom you will beget, will be taken away, and they will become officials in the palace of the king of Babylon. Then Hezekiah said to Isaiah, the word of the Lord which you have spoken is good. For he thought, for there will be peace and truth in my days. So what future event is Isaiah referring to here? This is easy. Yeah, when Nebuchadnezzar, well, he comes in and he takes Jerusalem. And he takes everybody in Jerusalem, except a few, that he figured they were worthless. But he takes everybody else back to Babylon. And that's all in the book of Daniel. What do you think of Hezekiah's response? It's kind of like, I'm not going to have to pay for my knuckleheaded move. You know, it's kind of like, everything's going to be fine while I'm still king. A little bit self-centered. There's no sensitivity to say God's people and God's city is going to be taken. There just doesn't seem to be any sensitivity by. That struck me that way when I read what Hezekiah's response was. Hey, everything been good for me. So that's the end of that chapter. It's a really short chapter. Then it's the greatness of God. And there's a greatness of God, and it's a very broad greatness of God. It's a long chapter, but I'll get through it. So, comfort, oh comfort my people, says your God. Speak kindly, parenthetically, to the heart of Jerusalem. And call out to her that her warfare, or her hard surface, has ended. That her iniquity, penalty for iniquity accepted and has paid off, has been removed. That she has received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. So, what would be the hard service of Jerusalem? And I'll say, unless you've read the whole chapter, this is hard. I had to read it a few times to come up with a conclusion. May not be right, but hopefully it is. But he does. He talks about the hard surface, the warfare. What do you think the warfare is? Do you think it's physical or spiritual?
I think it's kind of
It was that. And you would think after the last chapter, that's what it would be about. Reading it in the context of the whole chapter, the hard surface, the warfare that I had was the war between us and God because of what we do. There's a warfare for our souls between the good and evil. And I think what he's saying here is the hard surface that we have was to bring the Messiah, to stay true to God. It has been hard for them. Now, they made it harder for themselves, didn't they? But look at it from that particular standpoint, because that's kind of where I came from, is because when you say, comfort, oh, comfort my people, says your God, speak kindly to Jerusalem, that her hard surface is ended, that her iniquity, in other words, the things that you've done wrong, have been removed, that she has received of the Lord's hand double for all their sin. In other words, you've received sacrifice. There's much more than what your sins removed you from God. A voice is calling, of one calling, clear the way for the Lord in the wilderness. Make smooth in the desert a highway for your God, for our God. Let every valley be lifted up, and every mountain and hill be made low, and let the rough ground become a plain, and the rugged terrain a broad valley. Then the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all flesh will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Who's the voice that cleared the way for the Lord? Remember the first verse. The voice is calling. Clear out the way of the Lord. Who did that? Huh?
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist. Right here in Matthew. Now in those days, John the Baptist arrived, preaching, proclaiming as a herald. These are the interpretations that are below it where they had the numbers in there. In the wilderness of Judea, saying, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand, or has come near. For this is the one referred to by Isaiah the prophet when he said, the voice of one crying, shouting in the wilderness, make ready the way of the Lord, make his path straight. And if you look at that verse 3 and 4, you make in the desert a highway, the valley be lifted up, every mountain and hill be made low. That's making the way for the Lord. So what he's talking about in that first part of it, on the last slide, in this slide, is he's talking about the coming of Christ. What could all flesh not see? Who will all flesh see? What could Moses not see? No, what could Elijah not see? The glory of God. He could not see the Father. So flesh could not see that. But here it says, flesh will see. Who will they see? Jesus. Okay, that's what he's talking about here. He's talking about John the Baptist laying the way, and that reference back in Matthew, if you look at the reference in there, it references back to verse 40, or chapter 40. And it says, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make ready the way of the Lord, his path straight. And that's what it's talking about. And then what it talks about in the second part, it says, all flesh will see together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. What does it say in John 1? John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word was God. He is the mouth of the Lord. I mean, it's pointing to him pretty hard if you look at it. But you got to put it all together. A voice says, call out. Then answered, I said, what shall I call out? All flesh is grass, and all its loveliness is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades. When, or because, the breath of the Lord blows upon it, surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. What's Isaiah contrasting here? The people are the grass and the flowers versus what? What's the contrast? Huh? The eternal word. And who's the word? It's not a thing. It's Jesus. Stands forever. He's forever. People aren't, but he is. And he's contrasting the difference between the two of them. I think that was it. Yeah. Get yourself up on a mountain, O Zion, bearer of good news. Lift up your voice mightily. O Jerusalem, bearer of good news. Lift it up, do not fear. Say to the cities of Judah, here is your God. Behold, the Lord God will come with might, with his arm ruling for him. Behold, his reward is with him and his recompense before him. Like a shepherd, ding, 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 he will tend his flock. In his arm he will gather the lambs and carry them in his bosom. He will gently lead the nursing ewes. Everybody knows what a ewe is? It's a little lamb. Okay, so who's Isaiah referring to here, and what indicators has he provided? Is this a continuation of the thought? And Christ is a shepherd. Some of those things, what are the indicators that we have? I got the first one, good news. What's another word for the good news? Huh? The gospel. The good news is the gospel. He says, lift up your voice. Shout out the good news. The good news is the gospel. The gospel is the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Pretty clear. How about his arm ruling for him? Why does that point to Christ? How about this? With this help? Luke. From now, the Son of Man was seated at the right hand of the power of God. Ever hear of a right-hand man? He's at the right hand of God, power of God. He's the arm. Who's ruling the kingdom right now? Christ. He is the arm ruling for him, for the Father. What does he do at the end of the time? What does he do at the end of time? Hands it back to the Father. Okay, last one. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who's a hired hand and not a shepherd, who's not the owner of the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand, not concerned for the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. He's the shepherd. All three of those things. The gospel, he's ruling for him, he's the right arm for him, and he's the shepherd. All three of those things point to Christ. Yes, ma'am.
Why did they interchange the Son of Man and the Son of God? Just back up a little bit on those terms. Some can see that, and I often wonder why he's referred that way.
He's both. Because he came down here and became flesh, he was the Son of Man. But because the Father was God, he's the Son of God. So he's both. Does that help? Okay. That's out of John. So, back to Isaiah. Who has measured the waters? There's a switch here. Don't want to lose anybody, but there's a switch here. Who has measured the waters of the sea, in the hollow of his hand, and marked the heavens by the span, or half a cubit, and calculated the dust of the earth by the measure, and weighed the mountains in a balance, and the hills in a pair of scales? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or has his counselor has informed him? With whom did he consult? And who gave him understanding? And who taught him in the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and informed him of the way of understanding?
God asked a very similar question of Job. Job's friends thought they knew it all. And
Yeah.
God said, answer this just for me.
Yeah. This, I believe, is switched. It's switched to the Father at this particular point. So that part of the Godhead is switched that he's talking about. He's talked about Christ coming, what he's going to be, and now it seems to be Isaiah is talking about the Father, because he is the one who has measured everything. He's the one who is in control of everything. particularly verse 14. What's the point Isaiah is making? Yeah, when he asks, he says, whom did he consult and gave him understanding? Did God need to talk to anybody else to understand something? No. What he's talking about is the superiority of God, is he has all understanding, and he didn't have to get it from anybody. It's who he is. He understands everything. Behold, the nations are like a drop from a bucket, and are regarded as a speck of dust on the scales. Behold, he lifts up islands, coastlands, like fine dust. Even Lebanon is not enough to burn, nor its beasts enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are nothing before him. They were regarded by him as less than nothing and meaningless, void. And I think there's frustration on Isaiah's part, because who do they keep turning to get help to defend them? The people of God. Other nations. They made a pact with Assyria, bad idea. They're now making a pact with Babylon, bad idea. Israel made a pact with Egypt, bad idea. And he's saying, what? Why are you going to those people? Those nations are like a drop in the bucket, like a speck of dust on the scales. They're nothing. They have no power. Those armies, the armies of Assyria, the army of Babylon, armies of Babylon. Who's in control of those? He's referred to as the God of armies. What do you think those armies are? The armies of Assyria, the armies of Babylon. He's the God of armies. He controls them. He uses them for his own purpose. That's right, yeah. I have all understanding. I don't talk to anybody. I know everything. We've known people who think they know everything, but God actually does know everything. So the comparison he's making here is between the nations that they seem to want to rely on and God. He says, you're dumb. Okay. To whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare with him? For as for an idol, a graven image, a craftsman casts it, a goldsman plates it with gold, and a silversmith fashions chains of silver. He who is too impoverished for such an offering, in other words, can't afford the gold or the silver, selects a tree that does not rot. He seeks out for himself a skillful craftsman to prepare an idol that will not totter. In other words, won't fall over. So what's the comparison he has here? He says, the nations are a bad idea. You ought to rely on God. Your idols, when you compare them to God, they're a really bad idea too. Don't go to those. Okay? You got a graven image idol that's down at the bottom. That will not, in other words, it won't fall over. How strong is that God? And the other ones that are craftsmen, a goldsman plates it, and the silversmith fashion chains of silver, maybe to hang around your neck. It's like, you made this. You didn't make God. God made you. I will finish early. Good. Okay. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been declared to you from the beginning? Have you not understood that the foundations of the earth? It is he who is enthroned above the circle, the vault of the earth. In other words, way beyond the earth. And its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. He it is who reduces rulers to nothing, who makes the judges of earth meaningless. So why does he ask the questions here? Yes? what, 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. Did you forget? Yeah, don't you remember? Haven't you been taught? Remember, a lot of the teaching was oral teaching. Okay, they passed it down, oral teaching that they had, because a lot of people didn't read. But they've been taught. They supposedly have had the word brought to them. Certainly they had the part brought to them where they had to come in and offer sacrifice and buy the animals at a special price that was going on at the temple sale. But he asked these questions here to say, come on, you know this. You know the answer to this. You know the comparison of false idols to God. What stories do you have about your idol that's sitting there that's made out of gold? What did it ever do? The nations, you relied on them. What did they do to you? They turned around and stabbed you in the back. What has the Lord ever done for you? Oh, gee, he took you out of captivity. He gave you food and clothing for 40 years while you wandered around. He gave you the land you're in. He's protected you as long as you were faithful. What has he ever done to you that's bad? So he's asking the questions, don't you remember? Think about this. Okay. And he talks about, he reduces the rulers to nothing. Who was one ruler that you can think of that he reduced that said, wow, look at everything I did? You think of one? He's the God of armies. Kind of, that's a clue. Stood out, walked out on his palace terrace, looked at everything and said, look at everything I did. Nebuchadnezzar. And what did he do to him? He reduced him to nothing. And then, you kind of go back to the first part of it. Nebuchadnezzar remembered to say, who did this really? And when he said, God really did this, God restored him. But you can see here, he's going through, and he's talking about what he's going to do, because Nebuchadnezzar is in the future, about 100 years in the future, 60 to 100 years in the future from where they're at right now. Scarcely, not even is kind of what the interpretation of what scarcely was, or scarcely is the interpretation of not even. Have they been planted? Scarcely have they been sown. Scarcely has their stock taken root in the earth. But he merely blows on them, and they wither. And the storm carries them away like stubble. To whom then will you liken me that I should be his equal, says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars, the one who will lead forth the host by number. He calls them all by name because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. None of them is missing. So what has been scarcely planted, sown, and taken root? Scarcely being not even, hardly. Huh? Well, that would be the word, but if it was the word, would it be blown away and wither and storm carries away like stubble? Huh? Well, they didn't pay attention to it, but remember what he was talking about in the last couple verses. Idols. Okay. You're getting all these new idols you're bringing in. Where are you bringing them in from? All the people around them. And he said, they're not going to last. Do we have people really, by and large, worshiping the Roman or the Greek pantheon today? Do we have people who are worshiping Baal and Asheroth? Okay, we have Satan worshipers, but we don't have, huh? They worship money, have our own idols, and that certainly does burn and things like that. But he says, you're looking to this stuff that's just, it's temporal. It's not real. It barely got started, and it's gone. Oh, well, you throw that particular god away. Why would they go ahead and throw a god away and go to another god? It didn't do them any good. They got conquered. Well, we got conquered. The guy who conquered us, they brought in their own gods. Well, those must be better gods than Guy had got, so I'll take those gods. It's like, okay, that gets planted. And then another kingdom comes in and conquers that kingdom, and they have their own god. He says, they hardly get started. And the next group comes in, blows them all away. From whose perspective have the idols been scarcely planted, sown, taken root? Isn't it from God's? 1 day is like 1,000 days. I mean, if it's been around a couple hundred years, 500 years, to him it's like, it's an instant in time. It's just barely been there. Why does Isaiah direct them to understand who created the stars? What did men do? Yeah, he put all those lights up in the sky.
The expanse of creation. I mean, you look beyond the stars, the fact that our planet is so protected, so perfect. It spins a certain way.
It spins and it revolves and it stays there all the time, you know? It defies logic that it would stay there like that.
Even the biology defies physics.
It does. The physics don't completely explain it as it is. What do they do with the stars? When you look up at something in the sky and you see a constellation, what are they named? Aphrodite, the belt of Orion, Pleiades. They're all named after these ancient things that we have because everybody looked up in the sky and says, oh, there he is. And they didn't see God. They saw something else. And I think what he's doing here is to say all these things that you've assigned to these different idols and like that, the one who made them was God. They didn't make them. You just attributed it to the stars, but it wasn't. You attributed it to the wrong thing. Go ahead.
They, at that time, I'm guessing that they used the stars for navigation also.
Yeah.
And so I kind of look at it from that perspective also, like,
That's true.
look to me and I will navigate you. Like,
That's true. That's true. I will keep you on a good path. You use the North Star.
right.
And certainly with the bed, they needed something to give good navigation. That is big enough for them in the small boats they needed something to navigate. So there may be that too. But it's to say, he's the one who put them in. He placed them exactly where they are. Do you understand that? It's like he's trying to make a point to say, everything that you contributed to these earthly kinds of things you made up, God did it. God thought. He was the one who orchestrated all of it. Why do you say, O Jacob, and assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and just as due me escapes, pacify my God, the notice of my God. Do you not know, have you not heard, the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. His understanding is inscrutable. What false assumption do the people of God have that Isaiah addresses, and why do you think they made that assumption? Think about it from this perspective. The people of God, maybe Jerusalem, maybe Judah, you draw it bigger. Maybe it was Israel, you draw it even bigger. But the people certainly of Jerusalem, I go to temple, I offer my sacrifice. But when I get home, I got my little idol. I get my little idol out, and I can pray to that little idol. God hasn't done anything yet. So I'm okay. I'm covering all my bases. Okay? I worship the God of heaven at the temple. But when I get home, I worship this little idol here. And why they think they're getting away with it is because, well, God hasn't done anything wrong. I've done anything to me. I'm okay so far. It's kind of like somebody who falls from a 20-story building, and as they pass each story, say, so far, so good. It's not the fall that kills you. It's the sudden stop at the end. Okay? They're going along saying, okay, I've been doing it so long, and God hasn't punished me. God's patient. Very patient. Sometimes he does it not in years, but hundreds of years before he does something. Because like I said, it's going to be a while before he takes something with Babylon. Go ahead, Clive.
Omniscience. God does not see everything.
No, yeah, he doesn't see everything, yeah.
Hide something from him.
Which kind of leads to they think, what do they think God does not know what they do? He thinks, well, maybe he gets tired and he's not looking at it. Because remember, with some of their gods,
When the God doesn't do anything, they say, well, maybe the God's sleeping and you have to wake him up and everything like that. It's like, God doesn't sleep, okay? He knows everything. He's there all the time. He doesn't become weary or tired. He just is patient. You don't wear him out. He's just patient, waiting for you to say, have you got it yet? What's inscrutable? His understanding is inscrutable. Okay. So inscrutable means beyond understanding. So it really says his understanding is beyond your understanding. That's what he's saying. He gives strength to the weary, and to him who lacks might, he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous men stumble badly, yet those who wait, hope in, for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. What examples do we have of God giving strength or power? Strength to the weary. Who? The eagle. How about Samson? How about Moses? What was Moses like to the day he died? As vigorous and as strong as he was when he was younger. He's a guy who's pretty old. He gave strength and power for them to do it. How about the apostles? What did he give them? Power through the Spirit. Certainly Samson had power through the Spirit. Moses was restored by the Spirit. What do we hope for in the Lord? Isn't it eternity with him in heaven? I mean, this is the closing part of this particular chapter from Isaiah. But he says, those who wait, those who have hope. In other words, it's future. And you have hope in that future. 1 Corinthians talks about it, right? 13. Hope, faith, and love. The best of those is love. But hope is in what God's promised us. We have hope in that redemption. And because of that, we'll run and not get tired. We'll walk and not become weary. We won't be thirsty. We won't hurt. Those are all things that are promised in heaven. Those are all future things that he's talking about that none of these other gods promise you. They don't promise you anything in the future. None of those gods, none of those Roman gods in the pantheon, the Roman pantheon, the Greek pantheon, or all the other gods that they had, none of them promised you anything. Shed.
Most gods promise instant gratification.
Yeah,
That's what they do.
yeah. There's no hope.
I don't know the time frame
That's true. That's true. And that was timely. That was a second. Sing the wondrous love.